Alright, this is the video tutorial for lesson 7.5. And first of all, we actually start with the warm-up. Oops, it should be on warm-up 1 here. So we've got two equations, p of x, q of x. And these are kind of functions. Normally we have f of x, which we use f because it's a function. But these are kind of like y equals, but we use different letters to show which equation is which. So if I say p of x, you know I'm clearly talking about this one. Whereas if they both said y equals, it might not be clear which one it is without reading out the whole expression. So the question is, for which value of k will the x-intercept be equivalent to the x-intercept for the p of x? So p of x I already typed in, and you can see that it's got an intercept of 4.5. And for the other one, equivalent just means it's going to be the same. So 2x plus, we can just try and type in each one at a time and have a look. Does it have the same intercept? Well, that one you could see pretty quickly was not. And actually, pretty quickly we can see that that one is. It goes through exactly the same point, so we can pick our answer. And we'll get that. And then question 2 asks you to do a similar one, and you can type in each number. So plus negative 5 over 2 really is just subtract 5 over 2, so we should put that. You can see that clearly is not the same intercept, so let's get rid of that. Let's try plus positive 5 over 2. And you can see that that is correct, except when you select the answer it says that it's wrong. That's me just playing a few games. I want to see if people are actually going to select this one which says it's the correct answer even though it's clearly the wrong answer. So the correct answer is 5 over 2 even though it says it's wrong on here. Don't worry about that. Now lesson 3 is called Quadratics and the Zero Product Property. I personally think it should be called Solving Quadratics. That's really what we're going to focus on today. The zero product property is when something is factored, if we can set it equal to 0, then what we do is basically if something equals 0 and it's multiplied together, either the first thing must be 0 or the second thing must be 0, because 0 times any number is going to give me 0. So if we split this up and then add 2 to both sides, you can find that the answer would be 2. Or you could subtract 4 from both sides and find the answer is negative 4. Now, I find this a little bit laborious because actually we already know the connection between the answer and the factors. We just do the opposite. So where you see negative 2, I'm thinking positive 2 here. Where I see positive 4, I'm thinking negative 4. So I think that's probably slightly long-winded for what we actually need to do. So similar for this, if I'm just trying to solve this, I'm just going to go ahead and look at the opposites here. So for negative 5, positive 5. For negative 2, positive 2. Technically, I should put x equals 5 and x equals 2, but we'll focus on the numbers because that's the most important part. Ones that have two terms like this, we do the opposite of positive 1, which is negative 1, and then this means times by 2, so the opposite of doing that is to divide by 2. Now, in lesson 7.4 and lesson 7.3, you actually did this in reverse. You had the x-intercept, and then you had to change it into a factor. And you did it by doing the opposite. So where it said negative 1, you put positive 1. And then the 2 you had to bring to the front of the question and make into an x. So it's that same idea, but just actually in reverse while you're actually doing this. For minus 5, then you can just do the opposite, which would be positive 5. You should pause the video and try these ones on slide 6, but for those of you who are just ready to check already, instead of negative 3, positive 3. Instead of times in by 2, divide by 2. So the number in front of the x is going to move to the bottom as we're working out our answer. Instead of negative 8, positive 8. And instead of times in by 3, you can divide by 3. So that, once again, the number in front of the x moves to the bottom. Instead of positive 5, negative 5, and a 4 moves to the bottom. So negative 5 over 4. Instead of negative 7, positive 7. And bring the 3 to the bottom. So that should take care of those. And then once we have our equation solving, then we could do these by hand. If we solve them by hand, we always try and set them equal to 0 and we try and factor. But we're actually going to use Desmos to solve these questions anyway. So it says enter the following equations into Desmos. So I think the first one I've actually already typed in for you. So 3x squared equals 12x. What you're looking for is that same thing you've been looking for this whole unit. Look for those intercepts, 0 and 4, and that's it. That's your answer for this question. Now, the reason it works is if you plug 0 into the left-hand side of this equation, you get 0. If you plug it into the right-hand side of the equation, you get 0. And obviously 0 equals 0. If you plug 4 into the left side of the equation, you get 48. And if you plug 4 into the right-hand side, you also get 48. So clearly that gives you values that are equal. Now you could try for any other value, but you would end up with things that are not the same. So for example, if I plugged 1 into here, 3 times 1 squared is 3, 12 times 1 is 12, 3 clearly doesn't equal 12, and that's why 1 is not an answer to this question. And you could do the similar thing with this question here as well. If it's anything besides x, though, you need to change the letter to x. So 6x squared plus 5 equals negative 17x would be how you would do that question. Question 9 and 10, these would be very similar. You can type in the question, but make sure you put an x in. And there is actually a space here for you to actually practice that if you wish. Let's have a look. Using slide 12 answered this question here. So this time we got some slightly different answers. Like, it's all fine with the decimals and the fractions if they're nice fractions, but sometimes we get irrational numbers. We get the ones with radicals in here as well. So we've got to know how to deal with these questions. So same thing, you just type in the question first of all, and I've actually gone ahead and done that. And you can click on the roots to see, or the zeros, or the x-intercepts. Don't forget all those different words, solutions. And one thing I noticed right away, it's clearly not 4, and it's clearly not negative 1/2. No solution, you wouldn't actually see any lines here at all. You'd have to zoom out just to check. But clearly for this one, there is 2 answers because you can see them here. Now our decision though is it this answer? Let me go back to this slide just for a second. So where it says plus or minus, it means one of the answers is with a plus, and one of them is with a subtract. Now, one of them is positive 7, and one of these is negative 7. So let me go back. I did the positive 7 first. I did 7 plus the square root of 14 over 4, and 7 minus the square root of 14 over 4. And let's have a look. Were those numbers good? I think they're the same numbers. Not quite, not quite. We got 2.781, and we got 0.79. I'm just wondering if I typed in this equation slightly wrong. I actually thought that was the answer. And actually, if we look at the other ones, we can see that they're not quite right. So I got to look carefully. Negative 2x squared equals negative 7x plus 4. Not sure. I think something's gone slightly wrong on this question. But yeah, we should check the decimals to check that they're exact. And for some reason, they're not quite the same numbers on here. So I'm not sure what happened with that question. But we're going to move on to the next question. Oops. So 2x squared plus 7x minus 4. I already had it typed in here, so we can just look for those answers. Oh, is that the question we just did? I think that's literally just the question we just did a second ago. Plus 7x, minus 4. Oops, that one I definitely typed in incorrectly, so I'm going to change that. So negative 4 and 0.5. So negative 4 and 0.5. Remember, if you get a decimal, if you click on the fraction button, it will actually change it for you. And we're not doing the opposites today because it doesn't say factor. So this is literally just the answer to this question. Negative 4 and positive 1/2. And it says write them in here, so we will go ahead and do that. It does actually say you should do it as a fraction. I'm just curious. Yeah, if you put 0.5, it doesn't accept it. It does ask you in the question to write it as a fraction, so... well, actually it doesn't ask you to, but that's something that you should be thinking about when you're doing those questions. 16, this is the question, and just to speed things up, I already have it typed in here. So we can click on those 2 numbers, negative 0.75 and 2, and change it into a fraction. So negative 3/4 and 2, and then we should be able to fill that in here as well. Negative 3/4 and 2. Okay, slide 17. We're heading rapidly towards the end. Now, I didn't type in the whole equation this time. I typed in the first part, though. So it equals negative 3x plus 9. So equals negative 3x plus 9. Look where they go through. Negative 7 and 7. I think I can remember that. That doesn't seem too bad. Negative 7 and 7. And you can see as I'm typing them in that these are the correct answers. Another one where it looks like I just typed in half the answer. It says it equals 10. So let me go ahead, type in 10. And we've got negative 2 and 1.667. So the one for 1.667, what we really have to remember is it's not really 1.667, it's 1.6 repeating. But you've got to keep typing in those sixes to actually get the correct answer. So -2 and 5/3 would be our last answer. And as I type that in, you can see that that's correct. Kind of a short lesson, this one. Really was just copying in the equation, know what you're looking for, and knowing how to change those decimals to fractions. All things that we've been practicing on other topics as well, so that kind of makes this a good one to finish with. After you've worked on those questions, go ahead, start on the assignment for 7.5. You'll find it's in the Big Ideas textbook, which is exercise 8.1, and just a few reminders there about submitting work after you've finished. Always a good time, remember, to think about remediation as well, as this is kind of a shorter lesson. If you do have remediation that needs working on for retests, make sure you spend a little bit of time doing that as well. And that should do it for this video.